Hey, welcome back to the channel. So you're about to start a Microsoft-based data project. You're a data scientist, data engineer, or maybe you're somewhere in between. And you're wondering what I should have installed on my laptop/PC? Well, you've come to the right place. This is going to be a video that I update yearly, so we'll see what changes. And with that, let's start the 2021 edition. What should I have installed on my laptop/PC? Alright, so I've been in the consulting field for quite a while now, doing data science work and data engineering work, leading data scientists and data engineers on their journey, managing multiple projects for different customers in different industries. The question is, what do you need to have installed? I'm going to put the first piece of software on the screen. I'll give you a few moments to guess. And you guessed it, it's Power BI Desktop. So with that, let's go take a look at Power BI Desktop and the reasons why you use it. Alright, so here we are in Power BI Desktop. Let's see why you're going to use it. Well, Power BI is used by many customers. It's Microsoft's first-party service when it comes to visualization, reports, and data models. It's pretty powerful. Power BI Desktop is the tool that lets you create all of the ones that I mentioned before. So let's see a story that Power BI can tell. So going to this report, I can say to the customer, for product number 4 here, I can see that it constitutes the majority of the sales or the orders in the last couple of weeks. If we contrast that to product number 5, I can see that product number 5 had that strong start of 31% and it's quite cyclic in nature for its orders. So we can see it returns back to 30% and then we can see that it's in between, it's sitting at around that 20%. If we contrast that again to product number 6, the next one in line, we can see they just started selling it and it's sitting at that 20% mark. So we could correlate that it's kind of similar to product number 5. Now that's an interesting question that we can ask the customer. The better question is, by looking at those similarities, are there certain similarities between them that differ to that in product number 4? And this will help us for when creating product number 7 or trying to improve 5 and 6. Now, in order to answer that, it might be important to do other visualizations. And of course, we can do that with the lovely data model that we've built. So going across to here, you notice I've got calendar, I've got ingredients, and I've also got recipes as well. The thing with having ingredients and recipes, well, that comprises what's made up inside our dish. And we might be able to find if there are certain ingredients which are leading towards more orders/sales. Those are two important questions. Now, this is a simple model, but when we get a model which breaks out and has hundreds of tables, what are the add-ons that we use to manage those models? And there are two that I strongly recommend you have installed. One is called Dax Studio. So let's open that up. What do I use Dax Studio for? I use Dax Studio for performance tuning. So if I go here and go Advanced and go View Metrics, that's going to open up what we call Vertipack. And the Vertipack Analyzer is going to tell me my footprints. So it's going to tell me the column size, the table size, what percentage of the database or the model is it taking up. And it's going to do this by going down to the fields and columns and getting very granular for you. It makes looking for a needle in a haystack, when you're looking for 100 models and trying to find the table which is the most problematic, this is a lifesaver. So that's Dax Studio. It has many other uses, but that's what I use it for primarily. The next tool is Tabular Editor. So if we go over to Tabular Editor now, I use Tabular Editor for doing my DAX expressions. So my DAX measures, we can see an example here. And what you'll see here is I have the ability to format it, which is great. That's very easy. It makes it look a lot better for me and for other developers more importantly. The other part about Tabular Editor is it lets me create calculation groups. Now the reason why calculation groups are good, they're really good for time intelligence and they mean you don't have to write 3 million different measures. That's just two things. So calculation groups and formatting. The last part is the best practice. So you'll notice down in the bottom here that we have best practice issues. So Tabular Editor will actively scan your data model for where you're following best practice and where you're not. And this means you can generally improve your data model over time as per the best practices that the community is seeing in terms of models that are being created and followed. Those are the two of the tools that I recommend you have installed, or add-ons that I recommend you have installed when using Power BI Desktop, but definitely make sure you're very familiar with Power BI Desktop. Okay, so that's Power BI Desktop done. Over to the next piece of software. I'll give you a hint, I use it to interrogate SQL databases. Well, did you get it? It was Azure Data Studio. Now this one is going to be up for a debate. Some people use SQL Management Studio. Let's show you the reason why I tend to use Azure Data Studio nowadays. And here we are inside Azure Data Studio. Now what I'm going to show you reminds me of my Spark time. I spend a lot of time in Azure Databricks and Azure Synapse for customers today, writing Spark scripts, and Azure Data Studio definitely reminds me of that. So let's look at why. When I go into Azure Data Studio, the first thing that strikes me is the easy ability to find things. And that's so important when I'm interrogating a database. So going into Manage, I can go here, I can search a product, and that's going to show me my tables and stored procedures straight there. That's going to allow me to interrogate the database and find different things. Now, the next part is I see a lot of developers, including myself, prone to doing this. Select top 1000, select top 1000. I keep doing that and you can see the trend that's going to happen or the pattern. I'm going to have 3 million different tabs across here, very confusing, difficult to manage. Now, how I like to combat that, especially in Azure Data Studio, is by using notebooks. And yes, that's why I said it reminded me of Spark. So if I go across to here into notebooks, you'll notice I can go into a notebook. Now, the strength of a notebook is the fact that I can have multiple cells. So you'll see here, I've got one cell for my top selling products by customer's sales position. So what I'm trying to do there is to say, for my first customer's purchase, what are the top selling products? The nice part here is that I can easily add other code cell blocks to this notebook. So if I go here and hit the plus button and go code cell, I could then go and start adding more code to the notebook that was relevant. Each one of those queries are then ran independently as well. Now, you'll notice on the left-hand side that I've got an enrichment for my product, an enrichment for a calendar, and then I've also got a Scratch notebook. The Scratch notebook is where I put all of my experimentation and my playground. This logical grouping, or you could say separation, is very, very powerful. Now, I'd say Azure Data Studio is perfect for this. The parts where it's not perfect and SQL Management Studio are much better are for things like doing SQL Agent and doing SSIS or integration services. So make sure that you ask your client that beforehand what you're going to be using. Okay, and my last tool before we get to notable mentions, yes, it's Visual Studio Code. So let's take a look at that. Now, Visual Studio Code is a lightweight form of Visual Studio, but lightweight does not give it the props it needs. It can do so much. It's replaced my function of Notepad++, but also I use it over Visual Studio, the full-blown Visual Studio, most of the time. So why do I use it? First and foremost, Azure Functions are great to develop inside of it. The experience is really good in terms of if I want to do a Node.js, if I want to use C#, PowerShell, Python, whatever I want to choose, I can do it inside Visual Studio and I can live debug it as well. The other part is the extensions capability. So some you should have installed are the Azure ones. So if I scroll up to the top, you'll see the Azure account, Azure Resources, and Azure Storage. They're going to all let you either manage storage accounts or resources. The other one that I have installed is Rainbow CSV, and I highly recommend it. So Rainbow CSV is going to let you basically preview CSV. So if I go in here, you'll see this is what looking at a CSV looks like. It's much easier to nail down columns in terms of the records and the cells that match those columns, and to interrogate a CSV. So that's Rainbow CSV. The Azure plugins, like I said before, let you manage your resources inside Azure. So you'll see here resource groups. You also see storage here, and I can manage my different storage accounts that I have inside of Azure right from Visual Studio Code. Most notably, those are the ones I would say as a data scientist as well, you can put Azure Machine Learning into Visual Studio Code, but I'm saving Azure Machine Learning for the next video. That's Visual Studio Code and why I love it so much. It's become my go-to tool for development, and you'll notice I use it for React Native, I use it for my websites, I use it for Azure Functions, and I use it for all my Node.js and Python applications as well. It's become a really, really amazing tool, and I know lots of developers out there do love it and use it today. So if you're a data engineer, please jump onto it and get learning Visual Studio Code. Alright, so that's it. Power BI Desktop, Azure Data Studio, and Visual Studio Code. Make sure you've got all of those three covered before you start your Microsoft-based data project. Now, I also do have other notable mentions, which I'll put them on the screen up here now. These are other tools that I do use, but those are the three most prominent ones that I find myself using day to day. Now, for the data scientists watching, you notice I didn't mention machine learning software, and that's because I do all of my machine learning in the cloud nowadays. I don't do any on my desktop or PC. So what that means, I'm using things like Azure Databricks, Azure Synapse, or even Azure Machine Learning, which I highly recommend for data scientists to go look at. But you'll see them in other videos that I post on this channel, and also stay tuned for the next video, or one of the next videos, where I look at how I set up my Azure portal as a data scientist / data engineer. So with that, I'm going to close out this video. Give me a like and a subscribe, but otherwise, I'll see you in one of the next videos. This is Coder Meets Data, Travis Sansom, signing out.